Zero-RL is a training paradigm that extracts high-level mathematical reasoning from a base language model purely through trial and error. By bypassing supervised, human-annotated chain of thought data, the machine learns to solve problems through a continuous cycle of exploration and verifiable reward. Until recently, the massive computational cost of this approach restricted experiments to relatively small models. Researchers from Ant Group and Renmin University of China pushed this boundary, applying Zero-RL to a 1 trillion parameter mixture of expert space model. This chart compares the benchmark performance of a 104 billion parameter model against the 1 trillion parameter version. On the difficult AME 2026 math test, the 1T model achieves an 84.2% accuracy rate from scratch, outperforming the smaller architecture by nearly 20 points. A larger model possesses a wider representational capacity and a richer internal knowledge base. When subjected to reinforcement learning, it uses this vast latent space to autonomously navigate the search space of complex mathematical proofs. This data validates the AI bitter lesson, the observation that massive computational scale and self-play eventually overtake human-engineered datasets. However, this advantage only holds if the underlying system remains stable under the mathematical strain. At the 1 trillion parameter scale, the model autonomously develops structured heuristics. Without any explicit prompting, it initiates parallel reasoning and self-verification routines to check its own work. The raw output logs reveal distinct cognitive quirks. The model organizes its thoughts with clear markers like Step 7, verify, and even exhibits context anxiety, using phrases like, I might have a brain fart, before resetting its logic. Applying standard reinforcement learning to a model this size is rarely successful. Naively scaling algorithms to 1 trillion parameters typically causes immediate structural collapse. The math breaks down rapidly. The model generates unreadable text, the token output gets trapped in infinite loops, and the training run succumbs to numerical instability. Eliciting true reasoning at the 1T scale requires a departure from standard scaling. It demands a precise, multi-stage optimization pipeline to keep the algorithm stable across thousands of steps. The Ring 0 pipeline uses a 4-step stabilization process: Stage 1 RL, an intermediate self-distillation phase, Stage 2 RL, and finally Stage 3 RL. Stage 1 is the discovery phase. Because a base model doesn't natively generate step-by-step logic, its reasoning tokens start with very low probabilities. The system must aggressively amplify those rare tokens to bootstrap the process. To do this, the pipeline pairs a crypt importance sampling policy gradient with a token-level loss. This ensures that every single correct step in a long exploratory generation contributes to the gradient update. Warning tone. This creates a technical bottleneck. Amplifying low-probability tokens inflates the floating point discrepancies between the training engine, Megatron, and the rollout engine, SG-Lang. This chart shows the result of that unchecked mismatch, the numerical gap between the engines compounding until training entropy collapses entirely and the model's reward scores crash to 0. The first systemic fix is training inference ratio correction. Instead of relying purely on rollout lojets, the system recalculates the numerator using the actual training engine lojets, mechanically aligning the two engines. The second fix uses targeted mixed precision control. The system forces the attention softmax and language model head computations into 32-bit floating point precision, preventing exponentiation errors from snowballing. These minor numerical patches act as a shield, preventing the reinforcement learning algorithm from tearing itself apart at the trillion parameter scale. Stage 1 successfully forces the model to reason, but the token-level loss creates an unintended incentive. The model discovers that longer answers yield more gradient signal, leading to significant token redundancy. This chart tracks sequence length against reward. As the context window expands from 16,000 to 32,000 tokens, the model fills the extra space with circular logic. The output length doubles, but the actual reward gain is negligible. This extreme length reinflates the numerical gap between the training and inference engines, creating a secondary threat to stability. To break this verbosity trap, the pipeline moves to Stage 2, self-distillation. The system takes the successful rollouts from the Stage 1 model and runs a strict filtering mechanism. It extracts the shortest, most mathematically direct reasoning traces and discards the redundant loops. The original base model is then fine-tuned exclusively on this curated, high-quality subset of reasoning data. Self-distillation serves a dual purpose. It compresses the reasoning traces for efficiency and zeroes out the accumulated numerical divergence, creating a stable foundation for the next RL phase. Stage 3 is the sharpening phase. Reinforcement learning resumes, but the pipeline introduces this specific normalization factor, 1 over the absolute value of OI, to the loss equation. This single term switches the algorithm from a token-level loss to a sample-level loss. By keeping the gradient magnitude independent of the output length, the sequence stops growing unboundedly. This allows RL optimization to continue over millions of steps without causing a system crash. The final phase, stage 4, introduces adaptive depth. Fixed-length response budgets often waste compute on simple queries that do not require exhaustive reasoning. The pipeline solves this through tier-based training. Input questions are grouped into low, medium, and high difficulty tiers, matching 4K, 16K, and 64K token budgets, each governed by a specific system prompt. This teaches the model cognitive routing. It learns to provide concise logic for simple queries, while reserving its full computational budget for truly complex problems. By shifting the granularity of supervision from individual tokens to full samples, the pipeline builds a dynamic and efficient reasoning engine. These results raise a fundamental question. Has the pipeline re-architected the model's internal logic, or is the trillion-parameter scale simply brute forcing the right answers? We measure trace quality through comprehensibility, efficiency, and reproducibility. Ring 0 achieves dominant win rates for logical coherence. For efficiency, it uses roughly 6,300 tokens, less than half the processing length of competitors. For reproducibility, distilling into Llama 70B generated significantly higher accuracy gains than DeepSeek R1. These metrics suggest the model has developed a highly generalizable reasoning architecture. The high reproducibility scores indicate that these internal logical paths are structured and transferable, rather than isolated instances of memorization. AI engineering has historically relied on manually crafting prompt pipelines and curating pristine datasets to teach models how to structure their thoughts. The Ring 0 experiment suggests that for complex mathematical reasoning, many handcrafted heuristics can be bypassed. When the search space is massive, the model's self-iterated logic achieves competitive performance without manual data. When provided with massive compute and the necessary algorithmic stabilization, the model discovers optimal cognitive strategies entirely on its own. Building engines stable enough to facilitate this self-directed discovery may be the most direct path to the next generation of emergent AI reasoning.